started. All right. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Teacher Nerds Podcast. I'm Ron Nober.
I'm Joe DiPaolo.
I'm a technology teacher, 3rd grade to 8th grade.
And I teach 3rd grade.
And we have 2 guests today. Alison Morgan from Zensational Kids is back she joined us on episode 24. Welcome back, Alison.
Thank you. So nice to be back with you guys. It was so much fun the first time. So I'm really excited for number 2.
Awesome. And Joe, do you want to introduce our other guest?
Yes, I have an 8th grade student at a West Hampton middle school, my son. His name is Dylan. Dylan, how you doing?
I could be better, but because of this whole pandemic, but doing as good as I can.
Great, that's what we love to hear. Doing as good as we can.
Allison,
I love the honesty. You know, very often people say, you know, how you doing? And we really don't want the real answer because
nobody wants to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Dylan, thank you for being honest.
Oh, he will be very honest today. Allison, I'm a little worried, but I'm sure everything's going to be fine.
Of course it will. Of course it will.
So Allison, do you want to tell us a little bit about Zensational Kids before we get into our 2 yes more, 1 no way icebreaker?
Yeah, which I'm really worried about that 2 yes, 1, whatever that is. But sure, let me tell you about our company. So Zensational Kids, we're an educational company. We've been working with schools for the past decade, helping them integrate mindfulness into the general climate and culture of the school. And it's really about helping teach tools that students and educators can access their own resilience and ability to calm themselves down, cope with, you know, just everyday life, manage emotions, and focus their attention. And it's really not just all about learning so that students can be better students. It's really about teaching these human tools that we have within us so that it can carry us through our lives. So really life can be more joyful, more easeful, and we could be in control of our own lives.
Cool. Everybody needs that right about now. We're recording in the middle of the pandemic, so everybody could use a little bit of Zen. Right? Yeah,
and I have to tell you, I have been practicing these tools for almost 20 years now, and I have been digging deep. Using them, sometimes because I teach these things, sometimes people think like, oh, you just must be like happy all the time and relax and go with the flow. Like, no, I freak out too. Yeah. And I let myself freak out and then I pull it together by using these tools. But yeah.
And it's funny you said, I mean, we had spoke last time, I practice Zen, and the head monk, the Roshi at the monastery, I always found comfort in one of his talks. He said, some days it takes every single bit of Zen in my body to get through a moment or a day. And I was like, oh, all right, this guy, is a Zen monk, and he still, finds where he needs to bring it all out or dig, like you said, dig deep, which is, sometimes that's refreshing to hear that, you don't have all the answers, even if you are a longtime practitioner.
Well, that is a lot of the answers. And part of that answer is that we're human beings. Right. And we don't want to think that these tools are going to turn us into robots. Right. So it's about helping us have compassion and manage the human condition and flow through things. But in flowing through, there's ups and downs.
Right.
It's just that the downs don't take you crashing down.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's everything, this too will pass, right? Kind of thing. Yeah.
Impermanence.
Yep. All right, so we're going to jump into our 2 yes more, 1 no way, and we did kids books or children's stories or whatever you side you want to go to.
Yeah. So you ready?
Yeah. Do you want to start? You've been through this before with ice cream flavors.
I have. Why? Were you going to tell me your 2 yes?
It's complete. We love to have a guest start if you'd like.
Guest should start.
I guess should start.
All right. Okay. Yeah, please.
So I of course have a zillion love kids books.
Right.
There are just so many. But I figured, you know what? I'd actually like to give a plug for books that the general public may not be aware of, but are really, really good, especially important books right now. Both of these books are by a woman named Gabby Garcia. And what I love about her books is she self-published them.
Awesome.
And they're like #1 Amazon bestsellers. So one of them is called Listening to My Heart. And the other one is Listening to My Body. And the reason why I love both of these books is that these are things that we do not typically teach our kids how to do. To understand that our heart is really like a second brain, and the heart informs the mind, and so does the body. We think that the mind has all the answers. But when we learn to listen to what's deep within us, like in the cells of our body, it actually helps us navigate a lot of the challenges that we have. So I figured I'd like to give a plug for that. Because there are classics that I absolutely love too.
Could those books be used as like read alouds for younger grades?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in Zensational Kids, you know, some of the schools we work with, we're actually weekly doing lessons in the schools with the kids, and we'll use that book as part of our lesson and do practices of how are ways that we could listen to our heart and how are ways that we could listen to our body through practices that we teach in our curriculum.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I just wrote that name down.
Yeah.
Have to check them out. Now, is there any book that you just, maybe you don't dislike, but you're kind of, I can't hear that story again?
Yeah, it's not so much I can't hear that story again, but there are these series of books called Little Miss books.
Oh, yeah.
I used to read them to my kids all the time. And a couple of them, I'm like, did you really have to write that? You know,
Yeah,
like,
some of them are a little mean, I think,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like Little Miss Bossy.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about she's just strong-willed? Like, why do you call her Bossy? And how come there isn't a Mr. Bossy?
Right.
Miss Bossy.
Yeah, I forgot about those books. I remember they're like little circle characters, right?
Exactly.
Different colors and different shapes. Yeah.
I don't remember those.
Yeah, I remember those. I think my sister read those.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, dude. Want to let Dylan go, or Joe? You want to go?
Bill, do you want to? You got
So
some?
are these like children's books or like any kind of books?
Well, you're a
Primarily
child.
children. Yeah.
Okay, so like
that
books
you've
I've read in class and everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my first yes more would be The Outsiders. I read that this year and I loved that book. We watched the movie.
Classic.
You know, when you make a movie off a book, sometimes it's not very similar, but the movie and the book are very, very similar. My other would be The Phantom Tollbooth, which I read in 6th grade, and that was another one of my favorite books. But the one like my what is it? No More?
No way.
No, my No Way would have to be Fever.
Never even
I
heard
don't
of
know
that.
any of those
I
books
read that. I
besides
read
The
that.
Outsiders.
Yeah, I read that last year, and it wasn't a bad book, but I just didn't like it.
Yeah, there are just some books that don't speak to you.
Yeah.
I will say, as a reader, he blows me away with the things that he reads, and as looking back as myself as a reader, I wasn't a reader and I didn't necessarily read the books, you know, that he's blowing through now. And Ron, that could be the difference between a public school and a Catholic school.
Could
know,
be.
like maybe as I grew up in a Catholic school and maybe the funding wasn't there, or just, you know, I think about my 3rd grade classroom and the library that wasn't in the classroom, and now the 3rd grade classroom that I have in a public school, and just, you know, the amount of books that are in my classroom library.
Yeah.
I don't think there was as much choice either when we were kids, you know, in terms of books for kids. Like I don't remember there being as much choice.
Like the series and whatnot.
Yeah,
you know?
the different series.
I definitely, so it's just to sit here and listen to that. I'm like, man,
The
you know,
Magic Tree House
so-
is good too.
well, so the Magic
Oh,
Tree.
Magic Tree House.
Right. Well, and that's, you know, so I guess I'll start.
I think we have most of those books.
And that's, as a teacher, I love the Magic Tree House books.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I don't consider myself a reader because I read daily, but I it's not an activity I enjoy, and I think it's because of my schooling, and I wasn't given choice, and I wasn't given the options, and I wasn't I didn't get the opportunity to just sit there and listen to the adult read through read-alouds and everything. So like I can really, this whole two yes mores, one no way, even though it's a shtick, it's like, it's really hitting home. But I guess I originally had two specific stories that I think that I love using as read-alouds. One is Al Moon, because I just think it's a great story.
You read that in kindergarten?
And I
was a
read
good
it
book.
for him as a read aloud in school, and I read it constantly throughout third grade, just as just an enjoyable story. And then we use it for writing, and then weave it out through reading. So I love that, and I think The Spider and the Fly, loving music so much, I think that just has this rhythm to it, and a flow, and I just love, and it's good versus evil, and it's such a cool little story. I tell you, I don't think I have a no way. I don't, as far as all the fairy tales and adaptations, I mean, there's just, with everything out there now, there's nothing that I don't like. Now, granted, the Little Missy books, like Miss Bossy, maybe
Maybe
I'm
you would like those.
Dork Diaries.
Dork Diaries, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like,
Well,
why are you reading
but
that?
this is mine. This is you had your turn.
I
I don't think I really have one thing sticking out that's a no way for me. And that's coming from, I don't really consider myself an avid reader, but as far as like the stuff for the kids, there's nothing I don't. Now there's things the little third graders have read that have been not necessarily appropriate to them, but when you have kids that are reading at a higher grade level, like that's a whole different topic. So I'm going to say I don't really have anything specific, Ron. So this way I can end it, and I don't have to ramble on.
There you go.
All right. So my two yes mores. One has got to be Dr. Seuss, The Sneetches.
I love that book.
I just
love that book.
And the whole message behind it is amazing. It's something that I don't think we'll ever lose the message. It's such a good message. And my second one is partly because I like the story, partly because I love to read it out loud, is The BFG by Roald Dahl. I love to do the voices, and I'd like to watch kids when he's talking about whiz poppers and all these bodily functions that are going on, and kids start to realize, like, oh my gosh, what is he saying in this story? I just really like that story. My no way is from when I was a kid. My brother had my mom read. He read The Diggingest Dog. It's about this dog who gets out and just starts digging all over the place. He read this book hundreds of times, and I just I could not bear to hear that story again. I can't take that one. So yeah, The Diggingest Dog would have to be my no way.
So not that you don't like it, it's just you've heard it so many times.
Yeah, I mean,
he's not digging it anymore.
Yeah, I'm not digging it anymore. So that would be it. All right, so let's get into our topic today. I mean,
Awesome.
Allison, take us through. And I was wondering, what do you do? I guess a question I have is, if you have kids who are, when you started, are reluctant, or who are like, I can see some kids, middle school kids being like, oh, come on, breathe, how do you get them into it?
Yeah, well, a lot of it for middle school in particular. Well, let's ask you, Dylan, how excited are you about trying mindfulness, or have you done it before?
I've done yoga and stuff, but I don't do it a lot. It's like a one and done thing for me.
Yeah. So he's
say,
like my typical.
When I asked him to be on today, he said, "Sure. What are we doing?" And I told him, he was like,
"Ooh."
Okay. not
It's something different. Like
Right.
for the things like I've heard them do and everything, like they've talked with other teachers and everything. But I was like, mindfulness, okay,
Yeah.
because I do like random things upset me sometimes. I was like, well, I need to try this because
There you
Very
go.
very open-minded.
right.
So you just stated something that's really important to acknowledge, that sometimes it's like, you don't feel great, like you're upset about something and you just can't get past it, right? Or you have this constant like thought about something and you just you can't drop it. You kind of feel stuck. Has that ever happened?
yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, really common. And the thing about mindfulness, it's like training your mind. It's like boot camp for your mind, because lots of times, and this is true of middle schoolers and it's true of adults, you think that everything that your mind says to you is true, and you have to listen to it and you have to follow through with it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know in science is that all of us have what's called a negativity bias. So our brain is designed, it's wired to hold on to all the negative stuff. That's why we get stuck sometimes. And we don't get stuck thinking about all the great stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's easy to get stuck on even like the littlest negative thing that maybe happened, or the littlest negative thing or worry that you have. It's easy to get stuck on that because that's how the human brain is wired.
To focus on negative, to focus on the negative.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, where did that come from?
So it came as a safety feature. It's the safety mechanism that we've had historically, so that we always know where the danger is. We always know how to keep ourselves safe by knowing what to be afraid of, or what to stay away from, or what to watch out for, or what to worry about. If we only focused on the positive, then we'd never be aware of all the danger. We'd always be like, oh, this is wonderful, so I don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
When you think about it, like when we were like cavemen,
Right.
you had to know, where are the sand pits? Where are the saber-toothed tigers? Where is that tribe that wants to kill us? Like, you have to hold on to that in your memory in order to stay alive. Like, for human beings, our number one responsibility, our number one, is just stay alive. So this mechanism is in there as part of our protective mechanism. But when we don't understand how our mind works, our mind ends up controlling us. We end up being the servant of our mind. Everything the mind says, we follow through with it because we think that that's our truth. Through these practices, through training our mind, we learn to be what's called the master of your mind. It helps us understand that I could listen to what my mind says, but I could also tell my mind what I want it to do. And the more we practice being the master of our mind, the more that we start designing our lives, because your life is run by everything that you think and feel. That's it. Everything you think and feel puts you on a path of what shows up in your life and what you're attracted to in your life. So when you're attracted to all the negativity, that's what's going to keep showing up. But when you start to train your mind, like, this is what I want to focus on, like, this is my goal, this is what I want, and you practice thinking it over and over and over again, more things that align with what you're thinking start showing up, because your attention is more focused on the things that are aligned with what you're thinking.
It all makes, like when it's one of those things, when you say it, you kind of go, oh, yeah, all right, that's making sense. But it's to hear it explained, I think is so vital. Otherwise, people think of it as like this, airy,
Because people don't realize how much thought is going on here all the time. About 80% of our thought is actually in the subconscious, and that's what's ruling us.
And now that's all you have is time to think. So
Right.
so to 80% of your thoughts, you're saying you don't even realize.
The human mind
So is that
has 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day.
is that the id and the ego, like what you really want, and what, or is that a whole?
It depends what like philosophy you're talking about.
Okay.
In terms of about your mind.
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
excuse me. But through these practices, we start to bring what's in the subconscious forward so that we become aware of it, and aware at such a level that we could look at the thoughts that come in and just say, like, why do I keep telling myself like I'm a loser? Or why do I keep telling myself I'm not good enough for that? Or why do I keep telling myself so-and-so doesn't like me, or I'm never going to be able to do that? Or, you could start questioning the thoughts. And thoughts are just like, they're just thoughts. That's it. There's nothing else that stands behind them except the fact that it just entered your awareness and left.
Right.
And you hold on to whatever it is that you want to hold on to. So the cool thing is that we could choose our thoughts. We could choose the ones that stay and the ones that you're like, I don't need that thought. Like sometimes a thought is just there because somebody else said it to you at a time when you were really vulnerable. So you picked it up and you just owned it. And very typically, we do this to our children. Like, we create the thought in their mind, and we don't realize that sometimes the things that we say, they're perceived by a younger mind. Like, we think that it's just nothing what we said, but the younger mind perceives it as something else. And they, our kids develop this thought about
Oh, you can
themselves.
think of that.
We could all think about that with our own parents.
Yeah.
Right? Even
100%.
like I had the greatest parent. They were wonderful, but there were things that they said, like that made me have beliefs about certain things about myself and about other people. It's just because they said it all the time. Well, that doesn't mean that it's true.
Right.
But now it's become part of my belief.
You get that negative thought in your head, and because everything's wired to focus on that, if you're not trained enough to force it out, right? Like it'll drive you nuts.
Or just to be able to look at it without attachment to it.
Oh.
Like, wow, my mind keeps saying this thing. Wow, I didn't even realize my mind keeps saying that thing. Oh, is that true? Is that true? Or is that something like my dad just always says? Because his dad said it to him.
Right.
Is it true? Like, is that my thought, or is that somebody else's thought that I'm just repeating, but I'm repeating it in the first person?
Right.
Right. I remember reading something that said watch, and it was talking about parenting, and watch what you say to your kids, because your words become their thoughts. And
1,000%.
Yeah.
And we mostly do this to them from newborn to 7.
Wow.
Because from 0 to 7, our human brain is almost like in a trance. It's so receptive to the information around and holds on to that information as part of like the learning process for life. So the things that we say from 0 to 7 really becomes our kids' belief.
It's almost like formatting a hard drive.
That's
from 0 to 7.
Not almost.
It's yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy.
So a lot of what we're doing, it's like retraining. It's like I said to Dylan before, it's like boot camp for your mind of befriending what's going on up here, so that you could become the master of it. You can recognize. Sometimes it's like Dylan, you said sometimes like you realize like you're not feeling great. Like you're just like you're having a bad day. Sometimes it's because you just have a challenging emotion, like maybe the emotion's anger or the emotion's fear, like you're scared about something or you're worried. But all of our emotions are generated by our thoughts. But because so many of our thoughts are unconscious, we don't even recognize that that's what's driving the emotion. So if we can change the thought, we have a better chance of managing the emotions. And that doesn't mean like, oh, you shouldn't be angry or you shouldn't be this or that. It's just about really recognizing where a lot of our emotion comes from.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing people say, like, oh, I think when they think of like Zen or mindfulness, that we always have to be happy. Well, it's not that. It's, recognizing and being okay with just sitting with that emotion. You know what I mean? Like, I am frustrated with this and I'm going to sit with it. I'm not going to fight being frustrated. I'm going to recognize it, sit with it, but have the knowledge that that's going to pass. Mm-hmm. And something else will take over.
The other way that I like to describe it is that, every emotion, it's also informative. It tells us something.
Yep. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So sometimes we're angry, right? Sometimes we're angry, and it's because we're being put in a position that we don't want to be put in.
I've said so many times, I don't even care. You know what? I don't care. And it's almost like it's contradicting because I'm so angry. Obviously I care because if I didn't, right? Like if I didn't care, I wouldn't be, it would roll off, but it's well, whatever. And it's not, I guess, recognizing I do care. And maybe, either it's a self-adjustment, right? That might have to change, or it's just maybe letting go. I know.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also recognizing your reactions to things, right? So, like you said, like I don't care, but that it is that you really do. So it's being able to be self-aware enough that you could see yourself reacting in that way. And then self-adjust, like, oh, did I really want to do that finger pointing and say what I said?
The self-adjusting, that's the hard part. Like, I think almost like it, because I always talk to Ron and say, oh, I'm working on me, and I know that. And I think, it's easy to recognize it, but actually moving forward, that's tough. And that's, to me, that's challenging because it's recognizing it and then doing something differently.
And here's where it's about being truthful and vulnerable. And what I always say to my kids, I used to do this with them all the time when they were younger, but I teach this to adults too. You could always do a do-over. You always could do a do-over and say, I could do better. And the more you catch yourself in a situation where you're not responding the way you want to respond, you're reacting out of like habitual or, whatever. It's so incredibly powerful for everybody that you, like, if it's with your kids or your family or, even your colleagues or your students, to stop and say, oh, wait a second. I really didn't mean to say that in that way. I need a do-over because I want to do that over. I didn't mean to yell at you that way. I think I'm yelling at you because of something else, not because of what just happened. But it's also incredibly powerful for your own rewiring to catch yourself and to readjust. And you could do it anytime, anywhere, because then you're a model for that, so that then your kids know, oh, I could make a mistake in how I handled something, and I can readjust because I do get do-overs, because there will be times in life where that other person's not going to give you a do-over. So the more you practice the do-over, the quicker it's going to come, even in your mind, before you react.
And I think that's interesting because, we talk, Joe and I specifically, and we talk a lot about, letting kids feel the freedom to make a mistake or, have a failing. But I don't think we very often talk about it from emotions or mental, like we talk about, having failed a test or having made a mistake on a project or something didn't work out. But very rarely do people talk about it in mental, and giving yourself a do-over and giving yourself that ability to have a failing or a failure and fix it.
It's very similar. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, well, here's the other thing. We're so quick to label what a failure is. And I think our kids and our society looks at failure as you did something wrong. And it's a stigma of, you're not smart enough or, whatever.
All those negative talk.
Right. All those negatives. But the reality is that we learn more from our failures, grow us.
Right.
We learn way more when we fail than we learn from when we get things right. That's human wiring too.
Right.
Because when we get things right, that's like, oh, great, I got it right. You let that just blow away. But failure, like it imprints. It's like, oh, that didn't go right. It's like holding on to a negative. But when you look at it as, oh, this is my chance to readjust, to try something different, because what I just tried didn't work.
And you can see how
you
valuable.
learn something new.
It almost seems like you start the day with an affirmation and then you end the day with a reflection. So
I like that.
But to be like self-reflective, I guess, like Ron, like we totally every day, every lesson, every project. All right, how did it go? Now let's see if we can make it better. But it's also, it sounds like it's restorative practices where something happens, right, Ron, like with Dr. Daniels, like something we've been working as a district on instead of punishing, stopping and discussing behavior right when it happens.
Right.
This way it's he doesn't just get in trouble for doing something wrong and spends his lunch in a detention.
Right.
Thinking about, man, I can't wait to get that kid that gets me, and not thinking about the positives, like, hey, I did yell at him because I was mad at something else. And then the person who gets yelled at has a chance to say, hey, you know what? That made me feel, stinky that you yelled at me or you threw your hat at me.
Mm-hmm. That's why no tolerance policies, they don't work. They don't change the behavior.
Right.
Because
they punish the behavior.
Right. When we punish behavior, you don't learn anything from it, because we all need to understand where our behavior comes from. And our behavior comes from the way that we're feeling. And this is why social emotional learning is so important. We need to have a vocabulary and an understanding of, what am I feeling?
And you can see how valuable this would be in a class, in the classroom.
Here's the other thing about it. Your classroom is all about learning.
Right.
Right. But learning happens here in the prefrontal cortex. When we're stuck in negative emotions, it's all the back of it's the primitive part of our brain that is firing. So there's no learning happening, because
if you're sitting there negative talking yourself, you're not paying attention to anything.
No, all of your executive functions are turned off.
Yep.
So it's like, Dylan, do you ever sit there and study for a test and all you're thinking about is, I'm going to fail. I'm so worried. I'm so worried about this test.
A lot.
Yeah, so
a lot.
Especially with science.
Oh my God.
All right. So here's the thing. When you say that to yourself, your thinking mind, so the front of your brain is what holds memory. It's working memory. It keeps you calm. It helps you initiate tasks. It's called executive functions. This is where your learning happens. But when you're stuck in worry about it, or you're thinking, oh, this is too hard. How am I going to do this? I'm never going to remember all this. The back part of your brain turns on, because this is your primitive, I have to stay safe part of your brain. So it's going to be 1,000 times harder to retain anything that you're trying to learn when you're stuck in that loop.
That's where you need to have this mindfulness practice to help shut that down a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not to shut it down. It's sort of, I like to say it's to flip the switch.
Okay, or put it on pause maybe.
Yeah, or to calm it down.
Yeah.
To recognize it and maybe know not to let it control your thoughts, or
Well, it's to flip your thoughts
Yeah.
to something more positive. So instead of like, how am I going to do? I'm never going to remember all of this. That just puts your mind in panic. But if you could say, I'm doing the best that I can, and you use your breath, some breathing practices which help turn on your relaxation response and calm down your sympathetic nervous system, your stress response. Those types of things get the front of your brain to turn on.
Mm-hmm.
huh?
So it's,
I mean, and you were saying like executive function. I think like with remote learning, that needs to be firing probably 100 times more than it did in a classroom where you didn't have the ability to, I'm going to go and get a drink. Oh, I'm going to go and, play Xbox. You know what? I'm going to take a break and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are struggling with, the ability to focus, on the task. And that's the executive functioning, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's so many things about online learning that people are going to have to change if this is the way we're going to continue, especially for younger kids. I would say even younger than Dylan, this sitting in one spot with your eyes glued in one position, neurologically and developmentally, it's just not gonna work for learning.
It's hard for me to do that. Yeah, it's hard for me to sit in front of a computer I didn't have that much work today, but when I have a lot of work, I mean, I'm on my phone, eating lunch, like I'm back and forth between things that I shouldn't be doing and doing my schoolwork.
After listening to hear you talk, though, I feel as if he does get his work done while like having, maybe the office on in the back, while having his lunch right next to him, while maybe talking to his friend on the phone. So it's almost, is that multitasking at its finest? And
I don't know so much if that's multitasking. Probably Dylan is not giving himself as much credit as he should have for being able to pay attention in a sharp way in short bursts.
Well, not everything's beautifully finished, but
science.
But
not science.
But for the fact that things are getting done, like I know it at school. Like I just see the amount of work the kids do, and the amount of work that they're doing at home, and the amount of time, and it just really makes, I don't know, it makes me really think about, like, what are you thinking about? Because I even know at school, like, so maybe the Xbox isn't there, maybe Netflix isn't there, but your mind is a very powerful tool. And how many times, as a teacher, do you look out and you go, this kid's not paying attention? I mean, it's just so easy to drift off.
The other thing is that our mind focuses best in like 15, 20-minute blocks. After that, it needs to be redirected. It needs to like get up, move, breathe, get water, change the subject, look at a friend, talk to a friend. Like the mind needs that in order to function optimally. And think about, even with young kids, we don't give them that.
No.
Like we're not always using brain science when we're teaching kids how to learn. And that's what really needs to start to happen. And that's why I love teaching the neurology, like the neuroscience with the mindfulness, so that kids understand like some of the things that they're going through and trying to focus and all that in classrooms. It's because it's not designed to optimally utilize their brain and body to its best potential. it's still being taught for industrialization.
Right.
Just like absorb all of this and then go and use it. You know, it's really, I could really go on, I could get on a really big tangent, but I mean, many of us.
We got to get you on another.
We got to go do another episode on that.
I mean, because I've been saying for years, education it needs to change. It needs to change dramatically.
Well, this may be the impetus
and this might
to that,
be the
right?
impetus, and not that online learning is the way to go, but I truly feel is if we can figure out how to do little bits on online learning and then more real life learning, like saying to the kids, like for a science lesson, Dylan, what are you learning right now in science?
Oh boy.
Give me the big topic. Is it earth science or biology?
It's like Newton's laws right now.
Okay, great. Newton's law. So teach one little concept and say, Dylan, go in your backyard and build something.
Right. Yep.
Based on that. Go figure it out.
Throw a ball up in the air.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something.
Well, throw the ball up in the air and be able to tell me why certain things are happening. That's going to stick in your brain so much more than reading it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like my science teacher's doing, she's like, all right, watch this video or read this article. Now fill out this 20 slide Google Slides. And
but that's
traditional. That's traditional education.
Like and maybe if it wasn't science distance learning, it probably would look a lot different. So we're not going to bash any teachers.
No, it's not the teacher's fault. Not at all. I mean, teachers are doing the best they can with what they've been told that they have to do, and that this is the way
teachers have been taught.
Right.
I mean, so it's like a cycle.
It is, and they've been taught to teach according to standards.
Right.
The standards that everybody in this country has to attain.
Right.
So they've standardized how you're going to teach it.
Right. But I'll tell you, we run our classroom a little bit differently, and people know that. In the beginning of the year, some parents are worried. Some parents are really worried, and I just talked to a parent the other day, and they said, by November, I was like, okay, I see what he's doing, or I see why he's doing it. Because even now, like if it's not relevant to your daily life, I would rather watch the Ozarks on Netflix or what was that a show, right? The Ozarks?
That's what my mom watches.
Yeah, whatever, because
it was good. I liked it. I watched the whole thing.
Okay,
Stacy's
watching it now. But that's like why do I do this? And if it's not like Ron was saying, read this quick article on what this law is, and then go out and show me a video that proves that law and tell me why when I throw this ball, because now when this kid grows up, there might not be a line for them to work on and assemble cars, but there's going to be an internet, and there's going to be people that are going to get paid making YouTube videos. So it's like, well, probably who knows where it'll be.
But there's going to be people who are paid to be creative. Like creativity is going up there. It's continually climbing as a skill that is necessary.
And we need creatives.
Right.
We do. But if students don't learn how to be creative, and here's the key with being creative, it's based on your own passion of what you enjoy. So if students aren't given the opportunity to explore what they enjoy while learning something more about that, creativity just goes down.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
You see it all the time, and I see it now, given these kids the opportunity for them to choose when they're going to be doing things. I've said to Ron, I thought I ran a pretty progressive classroom before this happened. Now when we go back, I have to figure out, look, this is what we have to do today. Besides lunch, besides the specials, get it done and give, I guess teaching them and showing them the steps and, the gradual release of responsibility. But that, by the end of the year, it's like clock in, do what you're supposed to do, and, don't hurt anyone.
I don't know.
Isn't that that's like the Montessori style, right? Like learn what you want when you want.
You know, Ron, I went to a
And be able
Montessori
to
school.
say, hey, this isn't working for me.
And when you were talking about a Montessori school, was it our last podcast? I thought, or who someone dropped that, and I'm like, yeah, I went to a Montessori school as a kid. You know, that was my preschool, and it was not that I remember everything, but it's structured free play. You know, like areas where you could just go and do your thing. Now, granted,
and for some reason we stop at Montessori at like preschool.
Right.
Well,
like there are very few Montessori.
There are few,
Yeah.
but there are. I mean, I have worked with Montessori schools that go all the way up to 8th grade.
Right.
You know, and Montessori is really based on the teacher being a guide for learning.
That's what
I went to one, and my aunt taught at one for. I mean, she retired probably 14 years ago or 13 years, Aunt Charlene. And it's just really cool to never, I mean, I didn't know. I never realized they were so cutting edge. And now looking into everything and putting all the, I guess I didn't pay attention to the theory classes in college, but that, you know, you're just trying to get through, right? Like I want to get through, get me a job, and then I'll figure out how it works. Because that's what I've figured out as a learner. I can't just read it. You know, like I got to get thrown into it and do it.
But now you're going to investigate Montessori style more because there's a reason.
Right.
Rather than just because somebody said, read this article.
Right. Like this is a good way to teach, read this. Like, but now it's like all of a sudden there's a passion and it's like, wait a minute, I went there. It's a good theory. And now it's like, that's the interest to now maybe go read a little bit on it. And if it's really aligned to Ron, the stuff we're doing, like, I just think it's cool that it's been around for so long. And
it's like what, the late 1800s, early 1900s?
Not that long, Montessori.
Or, well, even like, you know, Dewey and stuff like that. I mean, that we talk about. I mean, you know, it's there.
That's cool.
All right. Do we want to
you want to do a quick practice?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm excited.
A quick practice. All right. You ready, Dylan?
Yes.
All right. So, you know what? I'm going to start with a breathing practice, and then I'm going to guide you in a meditation. So the breathing practice is going to be about helping to turn on that parasympathetic nervous system that I talked about before. So our autonomic nervous system could be set for stress, and it could be set for relaxation. What we always really want is to have a balance between the two, but in our world, in our society, most of us are set for stress. And that relaxation mode, we don't turn it on often. And it's not relaxation like so that like let's fall asleep right now. It's literally relax so that you could be in the flow of things rather than fighting things and protecting.
So maybe sitting during class and not being fidgety or something to that effect, maybe
it's really not about that. In fact, when I have kids that are really fidgety, to me, that's like they've had enough. They need to get up and move. Like it's a signal to me for me as the teacher, stop talking, get them up and moving their body.
Okay.
So this is really about how you could use your breath to access your nervous system to help your body relax. So it's something that you can use when you're feeling like super anxious, when you're noticing that you have, like you're really, really worried about something. You could use this before you start studying, because you know that like studying for science makes you really nervous or anxious or whatever. So before you study for science, just try this practice for a little bit. And again, this is about you using something that gets into your nervous system to calm you down. It's not like I'm going to talk to you and say like, Dylan, you should just calm down, Dylan. It's going to be okay, Dylan. Right? This is about you changing something within yourself to get yourself to calm down. All right. All right, so let's start with sit up nice and tall in your chair. Start with your hands on your lap. Make sure your feet are on the floor so that your body is secure. And if it's comfortable for you, gently close your eyes. And we close our eyes so that we could tune into our own body rather than get distracted by everything that's around. And let me just say, we're only going to be here for like 2-3 minutes tops. So I'm going to continue to ask you to focus your attention in different places. And your mind's going to want to wander, but see if you could just say, no, I'm just going to try this for 2 or 3 minutes. That's it. And then my mind could do all the wandering that it wants. Okay. So the first place I'd like you to pay attention is your breath. So begin to take a big breath in through your nose and pull all of your attention, just noticing your breath going in. And then notice your breath going out. You can breathe out through your mouth or your nose, whatever's comfortable. Okay, we're going to do that 2 more times. So breathe in through your nose, and maybe this time you actually feel your body getting bigger and bigger, like because you're filling up. And then exhale all the air out, and just notice that your body is now getting smaller. It's contracting to push out the air. Okay, let's do another breath in and out together. So breathe in, all of your attention on your breath. Maybe now you even notice the temperature of the air as it comes in. And then as you exhale, notice the temperature of the air as it goes out. Okay, now I'm going to be quiet for about 15 seconds so that you can keep your attention there on your breath, moving in and out. And even say to yourself, I'm just breathing in and I'm just breathing out. Okay, you keep going at your own pace. You might notice that your mind already starts to feed you a thought. Just like notice, okay, there's a thought, but I'm going to let it go because I'm just focusing on my breath. And then place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. So these are touch points that are going to give you more information or more awareness about your breath. So now as you breathe in and out and do this at your own pace, just notice that your hands move as you breathe in and out. And there are 4 of us on this call, and our hands might actually be moving out on the in breath and in on the out breath, but they might be moving differently. So it might be as you breathe in, your belly hand moves first, or maybe your heart hand, or maybe only one. And as you breathe out, you might only notice one hand moving. So I'm going to be quiet again for about 20 seconds. But this is for you to really investigate your own breath, how your body receives and lets go of air. So you're going to have a little quiz at the end. I'm going to ask you which hand moved first and which hand moved second, or if they moved together. Okay, so really investigate this for yourself. Okay, and take a deep breath in through your nose. We'll do this one together. And a deep breath out. Okay, and then just relax your hands at your lap. And before you open your eyes, just notice how you feel right now in this moment. And then softly flutter your eyes open. All right, so now's the quiz. Who wants to go first?
I will.
Oh, I'm the teacher pet, you know.
Okay, teacher pet. So what was the pattern of your breath?
So it was definitely my belly moving out first, and my heart hand was almost right at the end of taking that breath in. That's when it would move.
Okay, cool. All right.
For me, the hand that was on my heart moved first, and my hand on my heart moved first, and then my hand on my stomach moved last.
Cool.
My hand on my belly didn't seem to move at all. I definitely felt my hand on my chest go up and go down. But my hand on my belly just seemed to lay flat the whole time.
Okay. Cool. All right. So we're gonna do this again for a little bit, and Joe, I'm gonna ask you to lay down on the floor.
Oh yeah?
Yep. You're gonna lay down on the floor and bend your knees. Put your feet on the floor.
Like the bottom of my feet on the floor?
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to guide you in another way to do this breath, and then I'm going to teach you something about it after, once we all come back. All right. So start with your hands on your lap. Gently close your eyes. Just like we did before, we're going to take a couple of breaths, just noticing our breath moving in and out. So breathe in through your nose and breathe out. One more time. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out. Let's actually do that one more time. So breathe in through your nose and notice that your body grows a bit. And then breathe out and notice that when you exhale, your body naturally relaxes. That's a natural response. And then again, bring one hand to your heart and one hand to your belly. But now you're going to imagine that your body is an empty cup. And as you breathe in through your nose, it's like sipping in water to fill the cup. So as you breathe in, imagine that you're filling the cup like any other cup. It fills from the bottom up. So as you breathe in, imagine that you're filling your belly with this water, which is air. So your belly is going to swell. And then as you breathe in a little bit more, then your heart is going to lift because your heart fills with air. And then as you exhale, just let everything relax. And then you could even pull your belly button in just a little bit to push out the last bit of air. And we're going to continue with that visualization. So you're going to do it at your own pace and use that visualization of filling up the bottom of the cup so your belly grows. Once the bottom of the cup is filled, the top of the cup fills, and your heart lifts. And your exhale is just pouring out the water from the cup. So everything relaxes and empties, and you could even pull that belly in a little bit more to empty the air. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet here for about 20 seconds. And if you don't feel your belly moving with this visualization, just imagine that it is. Pretend. Use your imagination, your focus, and your attention. If your mind wanders, just bring it back. Just say, nope, I'm just paying attention to this for another 10 seconds. And I can pay attention where I want to for 10 seconds. I have that power. And together we're going to do our last breath in and out. So breathe in through your nose. And breathe out through your nose. Gently release your hands back to your lap and just take a moment and notice how you feel. And sometimes the how you feel, it isn't even an emotion, it's just what's the state of your mind and the state of your body. And when you're ready, flutter your eyes open. All right.
I
So
feel
Ron,
as if
that was what?
I should do that more often throughout the day. Like just laying down like that and breathing. That's huge. I feel relaxed.
It's a reset.
You know, especially after
Typing
you're
away.
hunched over, you're working to actually breathe. That was good. That's
Were
great.
you able to, did you feel breath go to your belly when you're in that position?
I think when I was sitting, I don't think I was letting my breath all the way out.
That could be too.
And then when you started talking about bringing your belly button into yourself,
Yeah.
like that's when I really noticed, like that's all going out.
Like the chain.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Yeah, I feel like you almost when you start to open your eyes, like I almost feel physically, and this is going to sound weird, lighter. Like my actual body feels light. Like it's a very weird sensation.
Well, there's a lot of sounds going on. Like I know, like with just sitting next to Dylan, like Dylan, I guess through breathing is burping sometimes, and I'm laying
Nice.
and then yes,
It's also yawning.
all that air coming in and out, and then just I get adjusted from the chiropractor. So just even going through all those breaths while lying down, you start to like things move and
Your body resets.
yeah.
Because our bodies know how to do that, but we need to stop and give it the opportunity to readjust and realign.
Yeah.
Breathing in like that reminds me of going to the chiropractor when she says, "All right, now breathe in," and then she cracks your back.
Yeah.
So now breathe in.
And then everything is like, it's like that pressure valve is released.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you're giving yourself optimal opportunity to get as much oxygen as possible. Oxygen is fuel, and it actually does make, in terms of a gas, it makes us lighter. Mm-hmm. We actually are lighter. What about, did you notice anything about like your head thoughts? Did you notice because I'm sure thoughts started coming in. Did you notice them?
You do?
Just the sounds that I could like hear. Because we have wind chimes, and I could hear the wind chimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just because like everything's just like so quiet now, and like just breathing in and out.
I didn't even hear the wind chimes. I think it's very easy for me to focus on, I guess, things, and if it's nothing, then I can just it's very easy for me to sit there and just relax sometimes.
Yeah. And
not think about everything if I intentionally do it. Maybe that's it. I don't, because when I go to bed at night, I don't turn it off. I think eventually I just crash.
Yeah.
But maybe that's why, not that I don't get good night's sleeps, but maybe that's why sometimes you can wake up and you feel like
you didn't rest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To get 9 hours of rest, you're like, I still feel tired.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll teach you just a little bit about the science of what we did, because that actually creates a shift in our nervous system. So like I said before, we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is our stress response. And we have this parasympathetic nervous system, which is our relaxation response. And most of us are always turning on that stress response. We're really quick to be like reactive to things. So our parasympathetic nervous system really does not get turned on as often as it could or should be. Now, when we breathe into our belly, we activate our 10th cranial nerve. It's a nerve that goes from the base of our brain all the way down through the center of our body, through our diaphragm, which is our breathing muscle, and it innervates everything within our abdominal cavity. It's called the vagus nerve. And vagus is like vagabond travels. So this nerve, like so many nerves from our brain, go down into our body, telling our body what to do. The vagus nerve goes from our body to our brain. It sends messages up.
Yeah.
So when and it is mostly fibers going to the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we breathe in our belly, as the vagus nerve goes through the diaphragm moves up against the nerve and it stimulates the nerve. When it stimulates the nerve, it sends a message up to the brain, you can calm down now.
Oh.
But you have to get breath to the belly.
Like a massage.
Exactly. Because when you get breath to the belly, that's when the diaphragm really moves. When your breath is stuck up here, the diaphragm doesn't move.
Huh.
So you have to, breathing into your chest doesn't do it.
This is a stress response. Like when we're stressed, this is where our breath goes. And this is why when we keep breathing here, we sustain a stress response. But when we breathe into our belly, we actually turn on the relaxation response.
Well, you can see that, like that would be like you're hyperventilating, right? You're just breathing these short, shallow breaths.
That's right.
Yeah.
So could that be the reason why, I mean, for how many years did men die at an early age because of heart reasons? I mean, could this help? I mean, this could help prolong your life, right? If
totally.
You learn to not be so anxious and to control.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I don't know why I just went there, but like it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's heart health.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe I thought about it because I'm in my 40s and
maybe.
Me too.
Huh. Maybe. That's interesting. And I feel like I'm always just going and going and going and I feel good. I don't want to stop going. But maybe to prolong the going,
you have to learn how to stop. You
have to stop and breathe, or at least breathe the right way.
It's about breathing the right way.
And my this year was really tough, not just for COVID. My co-teacher went out from October till February, and it was, I just kept going and didn't miss a beat, and it was great. But when she came back into the room, it was like a weight was lifted off my chest that I didn't even really realize was on there.
Now relaxed because you have more help.
And now, like, I didn't realize all my breaths were up here. And it's like when she came into the room, it was like, wow, she is coming back. I can breathe easy again. So it's just, it kind of puts the things in perspective for me a little bit. Like maybe you do have to stop. And 10 years ago, I would have never wanted to talk about my feelings or even acknowledge that I had feelings.
I know it's a real issue, the whole emotional piece.
It's like a crisis,
especially for men, because men are supposed to like man up and be tough and don't cry. And
for the first couple years, like, and I would start to change the way I thought because of things I heard. Like I would tell him, stop crying. Like it's okay to be upset. It is okay to be upset. And then so I'd have to start thinking like, change what you tell them, not necessarily stop crying, but it's okay to be upset, but don't let that rule you. You know, like don't let your emotions control you. Yeah. So let them
inform you. Let them inform you.
Well, and that's
not push them away. It's
inform, not control.
Right. Like, what is this emotion telling me?
But that's a whole different way of thinking as a guy, as a man. You know, as you want to be a man. But it's like, you know, you want to be a man, and for how many years his mom made more money than me, and you know, I don't want to say supported. But like really, like we supported each other, and you know, it's so I guess that's why maybe it was like, oh, I don't have feelings. Like you gotta stay strong and you gotta be the rock. But maybe that's the reason women are outliving men, is because women access.
We know how to balance a little bit better.
The emotional side of things.
Yeah.
But just think, imagine in the classroom, like this literally took us, and we did it twice, and right. What did it take? 2 minutes?
2 minutes. Everything I teach is no more than 2 minutes, because it needs to be practical within the day of an educator, and it needs to be taught often in order to, like we said, it's like learning how to breathe correctly. Right. So anything that you're learning, you need to practice it to get more proficient at it. And
so if you could even do this in a classroom, like every half hour or 40 minutes,
Exactly.
you're going to gain so much time.
Breath. Like we'll do it in different, in different ways.
Right. But you gain so much time in the long run.
Absolutely. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I mean, I said, I feel relaxed. I mean,
good.
It almost reminds me of the first time I went to do meditation. I had to take a class in college of non-Western religions, and I went to a Hindu temple.
Yeah.
And we did it. And I don't know how long we meditated, but I came out and I was like, I feel like I took a nap. Like it just, it rejuvenated your whole body.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just even think on the days that I stretch, like having a bad back, one of the things that I should do every day is just get up and spend 5 or 6 minutes of stretching. Yeah. And when I do sit there and stretch and really focus on those breaths, it's my back is 100 times better. But you know what? It's like that 5 minutes. I get up, I'm like, well, I got to make the coffee and let me get on the laptop.
A million other things that you'd want to do. Yeah.
Right. But I guess, it's almost like it's worth it in the long, because that 5 minutes a day could tack on years on just your health and healthy living and well-being and what do we say, like staying mentally happy and physically healthy. It could all start with breathing. And who knew I'm breathing every day and not doing it the right way?
Isn't that's the thing that's so incredible. And that's why I love teaching these things. It's tools that we take with us everywhere we go.
Right. You
could use it in any moment while you're standing online and you're somewhere and you're getting annoyed, or, you've got your breath. You always are in control of you. You always can be in control of you.
Well, we started this year we start out every day with, how are you feeling today? Are you a 1 or you 2 or you 3, to just acknowledge, like where, even as a teacher, just seeing who's where, is you get a lot of information in the 10 or 12 minutes that it might eat up in the morning, but what it makes up with in the end.
That's right.
And to just introduce another minute of, this is a good breathing exercise. Yeah. It's doable, it's usable, and we can now be living proof that you feel better.
Yeah. Great.
Alison, that was awesome.
I'm glad. I'm so glad. I'm glad I got to share that with you guys. What did you think, Dylan?
It was definitely different and very helpful, for me. So next time I'm angry, I'm gonna try that out.
Well, we have a punching bag in the. He was into karate, so we have a grappling dummy. I just put a double-ended speed bag in the garage.
Although it's pretty dangerous.
So there's definitely, you could tell when he gets mad because he storms out and you just hear it in the garage. So now which I think is a good outlet.
Yeah, totally.
But you don't always have the ability to go into the garage. So to have something else in your arsenal to not need anything, to like you were saying, you could be in line, you could be in the classroom, you could be stuck in traffic in the passenger seat and just to be able to use it. I think that we'll have to do a second one on the whole factory style
the industrialization,
because just to see it was like the switch that turned on, and it's the same fire that I've seen in Ron's eyes when we talk about it. So that could be another cool show.
Sure.
It was like we just interviewed, I don't know if you know Katie Martin, but we had seen her at Texpo here in New Jersey, a conference. Mm-hmm. And as she was talking, Joe and I were sitting next to each other and just kept turning and looking at each other.
Gotta get her.
Yeah, this is what it's all about. Like this
sounds like our conversation.
Yeah, and it's going to just take a lot of us, speaking up and speaking out and inspiring teachers that they've thought this too, or that they just start doing things differently. Like the change that education needs right now needs to come from the teachers. It's the only way it's going to happen.
And that's why
it's not going to come from standards.
Which is why Ron and I started doing this thing. It's just like we are having these conversations every day. So we're like, you know what? Let's record it and throw it out there, because maybe other people think like that, and maybe it'll be like,
and
hey, and to just fire someone else up, like, not that we're changing the world, but we're talking about a subject that can change the world.
That's right.
And it's it's an important subject, so it's cool. All these conversations, it's cool because it's like, wow, we're talking to these people, and it's like, we've never met you in real life, but the conversations it's like we've known each other for so long,
right?
Yeah.
Just because of the topic of the conversation.
Yeah. So we'll have to have you a third time to do that.
Well, I'm really, really honored to have spent this time with you. And Dylan, thank you for staying with us the whole time.
The whole time.
You're pretty awesome.
There's a couple times I'm like, yo, come on, pay attention.
All good. It's all good.
Well,
cool. I hope you guys, stay safe throughout this. Keep doing what you're doing, because, you got to be striking a chord with people. I mean, definitely you're putting good stuff out there. So I'm really thankful to be part of it.
Oh,
thank you.
Thanks for hanging out. And I think this is all every time we do something like this, it makes me a better teacher, so if anything, like, I know I appreciate it because I'm getting something out of it. And now I can go and, it's great today because now he's getting something out of it as well. But it's like, I can go back to the classroom if we were there tomorrow, and
we could implement it.
Right. And start to help the little kids out, and, teaching third grade. It's crazy that you need to focus on social emotional learning, but we do. We all do. Right. So, and you do. So do it.
Yeah. Alison, where's the best place for people to reach you if they want to get in contact? Best way?
Through my website,
www.zensationalkids.com, right?
Zensationalkids.com. Everything's there, and we have like a lot of free resources there for teachers and for students, and
Awesome. I'm going to stop the recording, and then can we just grab a quick screenshot picture?
Sure.
Thanks for listening to the Teacher Nerds podcast. Keep up with every new episode by subscribing on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Anchor, or anywhere you listen. Remember to visit teachernerds.com, and that's nerds with a Z. Follow us on Twitter @TeacherNerds and on Instagram @TeacherNerdsPodcast. And thank you for being one of the Teacher Nerds.